So imagine, you're sitting in this bustling cafe, maybe it's in Paris or Tokyo or Buenos Aires, and you've spent the last 3 years preparing for this exact moment.
Oh, yeah, you've done all the heavy lifting.
Right. You've memorized like 5,000 vocabulary flashcards. You've aced the B2 level grammar tests. All those wild intricacies of the past. Perfect continuous subjunctive tense.
All the stuff you're supposed to know.
Exactly. By all academic metrics, you are an advanced language learner. But then the waiter walks up to your table, wipes down the marble, and asks you this seemingly simple, everyday question about your order.
And we all know what happens next.
Total system failure. Your brain just completely flatlines. You don't just forget the specific word for like oat milk or receipt. You forget the entire structural foundation of the language. Honestly, you kind of forget who you are for a second.
It's terrifying, actually.
Yeah, it is. The silence stretches out. You stammer, you point at the menu, and you end up uttering this disjointed phrase that sounds like a toddler asking for a toy. And as the waiter walks away, you just sit there wondering, why does my brain short circuit when I technically, intellectually know this language?
It's the universal nightmare of the advanced learner.
Yeah.
And, it's a deeply visceral pain because it really feels like a betrayal of your own intellect.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
You put in the hours. You have the data stored in your head. Yet the physical manifestation of that data, the actual act of speaking, it just remains stubbornly out of reach.
Which is so frustrating.
Right. And we often frame this as a personal failing, right? Like a lack of genetic aptitude for languages, or maybe just a sign that we need to go back and, memorize another 1,000 flashcards.
Which is an incredibly demoralizing place to be. You hit this notorious plateau where your comprehension is sky high. You can read 4 newspapers, you can follow along with a complex film.
But the output just isn't there.
Exactly. Articulation feels like wading through thick, suffocating molasses. So today we're taking a deep dive into the hidden mechanics of this specific plateau. We've pulled some truly fascinating insights from the Advanced Learning Lab regarding language acquisition.
It's really groundbreaking stuff.
It really is. And the mission today is not to give you generic study hacks. We aren't going over verb conjugations. Instead, we're unpacking a highly pragmatic, very specific cognitive framework that utilizes just 99 fundamental sentences to completely rewire your brain's subconscious linguistic habits.
Yeah, it's a total paradigm shift.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if you have the vocabulary, but you still freeze up at that cafe, well, the vocabulary isn't the problem. Something is physically jamming the signal between your brain and your mouth.
Right, we really need to reevaluate the architecture of fluency itself. Because true fluency, at least according to the clinical research we're analyzing today, has surprisingly little to do with the sheer volume of words you've memorized.
Wait, really? Because we're always taught it's just a numbers game with vocabulary.
Exactly, but it's not.
Yeah.
It is actually about fundamentally shifting how your brain processes reality on a moment-to-moment biological level. So when you freeze at that cafe, you aren't just forgetting a word. You're experiencing an acute neurological traffic jam.
A neurological traffic jam?
Yeah. The Advanced Learning Lab actually refers to this specific phenomenon as cognitive lag.
Okay, wait, I'm stuck on this idea of cognitive lag, because if I know the vocabulary and I clearly recognize the waiter's words, why is my brain's processor crashing just trying to put the words in order? I already did the hard work of learning the language. What else is my brain even trying to do in that moment that causes such a massive systemic failure?
Well, let's trace the actual sequential path of data in your mind during that interaction. When the waiter speaks to you in French, for example, what language is your internal monologue actually operating in?
Oh, I see. It's in English or, whatever your native language is.
Precisely. For the vast majority of language learners, even those who have been studying for a decade, their cognitive processing remains anchored entirely in their native tongue.
So my brain is working overtime.
Right. So you hear the auditory input in French. Step 1, your brain has to receive that French audio and translate it into English just to comprehend it.
Okay, so that's already an extra step.
Then, step 2, you formulate your desired response, but you formulate it in English.
Right.
Step 3, you take that English response and you run it through your mental dictionary, hunting for the corresponding French vocabulary and the correct grammar rules. And finally, step 4, you attempt to send those newly translated French signals to your vocal cords.
Wow. It's like trying to run a beautifully rendered high-end video game on your laptop, but you're forcing the computer to run a massive, heavy antivirus scan in the background at the exact same time.
That is a brilliant way to look at it.
The game is going to stutter. It's going to drop frames. The fan is going to start screaming, but not because the game itself is broken, right? It's because the CPU is totally maxed out. You're forcing your brain to run heavy real-time translation software before you can articulate a single syllable.
That is the perfect mechanism to visualize because it really highlights the limits of our working memory.
Right, because our working memory isn't infinite.
Far from it. Human working memory is extraordinarily fragile. We can only hold a handful of items in our active consciousness at any given millisecond. So when you're listening, translating, formulating, and then translating back, you are demanding an impossible amount of computational power.
So the freezing is just the system crashing.
Exactly. In cognitive science, this external symptom, the stammering, the freezing, the sudden inability to remember the basic word for water, that is the physical manifestation of internal cognitive overload. The working memory simply collapses under the weight of that background translation software.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, achieving real spontaneous fluency isn't about training yourself to run that internal translation software faster.
Not at all. If you try to simply run the translation software faster, you will eventually hit a biological speed limit. Your brain can only translate so fast.
So what's the alternative?
The ultimate goal, and really the only way to achieve the effortless flow of a native speaker, is to delete that background antivirus scan entirely.
Delete it entirely.
Wow. You have to eliminate the background processing so that the auditory input, the internal cognitive formulation, and the vocal output all exist within the exact same linguistic environment.
No translation at all.
None. The thought originates in the target language, and it exits in the target language.
Delete the background processing entirely. I mean, I can already hear the collective sigh of relief from anyone listening who has just been trying to think faster for years.
It is a relief, but it's also a completely different way of operating.
Right. But if the core problem is this heavy background processing, we need to take a really hard look at the exact kind of data our brain is trying to process all day long. If I need to change the language of my internal monologue, I guess I need to know what that monologue actually consists of.
And I think this is where we run into a massive societal misconception about the complexity of human thought.
Uh-oh. What do you mean by that?
Well, we tend to harbor a rather inflated sense of our own intellectual depth when it comes to our daily inner voice.
Hold on, I feel a little attacked here. Are you saying my deep philosophical internal thoughts, my constant processing of the complex world around me are actually just simple repetitive patterns? Because it definitely feels like I'm walking around internally narrating a complex literary novel all day.
Yeah, the subjective experience of consciousness certainly feels rich and complex. But when linguists and cognitive psychologists actually map the syntactic structures of the human inner monologue, the reality is, frankly, deeply humbling.
Humbling how?
The source material highlights that our internal monologue is overwhelmingly comprised of fleeting, highly utilitarian, and very repetitive thoughts. You aren't narrating a philosophical treatise.
Okay, so what am I narrating?
You're thinking things like, I've got to get going, or I'm on the fence about this, or I am absolutely exhausted, or, where did I put my phone?
Ah, I see. So there's this underlying syntactic consistency. We use the same 4 or 5 underlying sentence structures all day long, and we're just swapping out the nouns and the verbs depending on where we are.
Exactly. The core architectural framework of human thought remains remarkably consistent across cultures and languages. The specific contextual variables change, of course.
Like what we're eating or who we're talking to.
Right. The names of your coworkers, the specific brand of coffee you want, the street you're navigating. But the underlying syntax used to navigate those variables is surprisingly narrow. You are deploying the same linguistic scaffolding at 8 a.m. to make breakfast as you are at 3 p.m. to answer an email.
That actually blows my mind a little bit. But wait, if our daily thoughts are fundamentally so simple and utilitarian, why on earth do we spend years in language classes studying incredibly dense, esoteric grammar rules?
That's a great question.
I mean, I remember spending weeks in high school agonizing over the pluperfect tense or memorizing these massive lists of irregular verb exceptions that I've literally never used in a real conversation. If all I'm really thinking all day is, I need a coffee and my back hurts, why the obsession with academic perfection?
This touches on the historical baggage of how we've institutionalized language learning. For centuries, languages were taught primarily for academic, religious, or diplomatic purposes.
Oh, like learning Latin just to read old books.
Precisely. You learn Latin to read ancient texts. You learn French to engage in high society diplomacy. So the classroom environment was designed to test your ability to read literature, to pass standardized written exams, and to construct formal, multi-clause essays.
So it was never really about just ordering a coffee.
No, it wasn't. Students are systematically taught the extreme upper limits of a language's structural capacity.
It's like we spend 4 years mastering the architectural blueprints for a massive Gothic cathedral while completely ignoring the basic recurring skills needed to just build a simple, functional cabin in the woods.
That is a phenomenal analogy.
And then we wonder why we freeze when it rains and we need shelter. We know how to build flying buttresses, but we literally don't know how to nail 2 planks together to make a roof.
Which means we are spending a disproportionate amount of our practice time focusing on domains that have absolutely zero impact on our daily cognitive load.
We're overcomplicating it.
Massively. Conceptualizing your reality in a new language doesn't require mastering the entire lexicon of a dictionary. It requires mastering the highly specific, incredibly repetitive vocabulary of your own daily existence.
We are rehearsing for the wrong stage, and this is actually one of the most eye-opening insights from the Advanced Learning Lab material. They point out that learners will meticulously, obsessively rehearse for external dialogue.
Oh, all the time.
Right. We practice for the theoretical debate about climate change. We practice the vocabulary for some high-stakes business negotiation. We practice the witty, casual banter we hope to have at a dinner party.
What do we miss?
We utterly neglect the most frequent, highest volume conversation we will ever have in our entire lives, the conversation we have with ourselves.
The internal dialogue. And from a neurological standpoint, the inner voice is far more than just passive background noise. It serves highly specific evolutionary functions.
Tell me more about that. What is it actually doing?
Well, your inner monologue dictates your itinerary, sequence by sequence. It mitigates your stress response when a problem arises. It constantly scans and analyzes your immediate environment for threats or anomalies.
So it's constantly active.
Yes.
Yep.
It is the primary tool your brain uses to regulate your physical state in a chaotic world.
It is the absolute baseline of your reality. And the source material delivers a very hard, unavoidable truth here. If that internal narrative, that itinerary planning, that stress mitigation, that environmental analysis, if all of that is playing out in your mother tongue, spoken fluency in your target language will perpetually elude you.
It is a biological blockade.
Wow, a biological blockade.
You simply cannot achieve spontaneous, fluid, effortless external speech if your internal baseline is anchored in a different linguistic reality. The latency will always be there. That cognitive lag will always drag you down.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if that's true, then spoken fluency only becomes truly fluid the moment you deliberately shift that baseline internal narrative.
Exactly. The ability to speak well at a dinner party is merely a secondary symptom of the internal shift you've already made.
And shifting this baseline narrative isn't something you can achieve by just sitting at a desk with a textbook for an hour a day, is it?
No, absolutely not. You can't achieve this in a sterilized classroom setting, taking multiple choice tests.
Right. This shift has to happen in the quiet, mundane, unglamorous moments of your actual life.
You have to take the language out of the laboratory and force it to survive in the wild ecosystem of your own mind.
So if shifting this internal baseline is the ultimate key to unlocking real fluency, the next logical question for anyone listening is, what is the biological mechanism to actually make this change happen? How do we rewire the inner monologue without completely short-circuiting our brains in the process?
It begins with a practice that actually feels much closer to mindfulness meditation than it does to traditional studying.
Meditation, really?
Yes, because you have to develop an acute, almost hypervigilant awareness of your own inner voice during what we call the interstitial moments of your day.
The in-between spaces.
Exactly.
Those moments when you're commuting to work or standing in a long queue for your morning coffee or just mindlessly washing the dishes or even just lying in bed staring at the ceiling before you fall asleep. These are the moments when your inner monologue is usually running rampant, completely unchecked and unobserved, right?
Precisely. In those moments, you have to consciously intervene. You have to notice that your inner voice is complaining about the traffic in your native language, and you have to deliberately, manually pivot that exact thought into your target language.
Okay, let's be totally honest with the listener here. Initially, this is going to feel incredibly contrived.
Oh, very much so.
It is going to feel exhausting, awkward, and deeply unnatural. You're going to try to think about the traffic in Spanish or Japanese, and your brain is going to violently resist the attempt. It will instinctively snap back to your native language the second you lose focus.
And we must emphasize that this resistance is a perfectly standard, healthy biological response.
Yeah.
Your brain operates on a strict principle of caloric efficiency.
Meaning it's lazy?
Meaning it wants to consume as little energy as possible. Think of neuroplasticity like an old vinyl record.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Your native language is a deep, smooth, heavily worn groove in the vinyl. The needle of your consciousness naturally wants to slip into that deep groove because it requires zero effort. It just glides.
Right, it's automatic.
But your target language, it doesn't even have a groove yet. You are trying to drag the needle across the smooth, uncut surface of the vinyl.
Oh, so it's skipping and scratching.
Exactly. The brain hates this. It wants the path of least resistance.
I love that vinyl record metaphor. It makes it so clear. So when the brain inevitably snaps back and the needle falls into the native language groove, we shouldn't view that as a failure or a lack of discipline.
Not at all. It is the necessary mechanism of growth. Because every single time you catch the needle slipping into the old groove and you consciously, physically apply pressure to drag it back out and carve a new path for the target language, you are forcing adaptation.
You're doing the work.
You are physically forging a new neural pathway. This is the literal definition of linguistic neuroplasticity in action. It is resistance training for your neurons.
Resistance training for your neurons. I love that.
The fatigue you feel isn't a sign of failure. It is the physical sensation of neurological growth.
To kickstart this process, the source material issues a very specific, immediate challenge to the reader, which I want to extend to you listening right now.
It's a great challenge.
For exactly 10 minutes after you finish this deep dive, I want you to internally narrate your immediate reality. And you have to do it without a single ounce of worry about linguistic perfection.
Perfectionism is the enemy of neuroplasticity in this context.
So no stressing over grammar.
None. The goal here is forced continuity, not grammatical elegance.
Just narrate exactly what you are doing in your target language, even if it feels incredibly mundane. Like, I am standing up, I am walking to the kitchen, I am opening the refrigerator door, I have absolutely no idea what I want to eat. Just force the internal monologue to operate in the new language for 10 consecutive minutes.
It sounds deceptively simple, but I promise you, it requires a staggering amount of cognitive focus. You will likely find yourself reverting to your native language within 30 seconds.
Oh, easily.
You look at a piece of fruit in the fridge and think the English word apple instead of the target language equivalent.
Oh, I would bet money most people can't make it a full 60 seconds the first time without their native language sneaking in through the back door. The needle just jumps right back into the deep groove.
It absolutely will.
But here is the catch. If we were expected to do this all day long, to painstakingly, manually translate every random, fleeting thought we have from the moment we wake up until the moment we sleep, we would all be clinically exhausted by noon.
It's biologically unsustainable.
The cognitive load would be totally paralyzing.
The human brain requires structure and limits to manage neuroplasticity without suffering from sheer burnout. You cannot carve the vinyl record continuously for 16 hours a day.
Which brings us to the incredibly pragmatic solution outlined in the Advanced Learning Lab research. To prevent you from feeling utterly overwhelmed by this massive undertaking, you don't actually need to translate every single thought.
Right, that's the key.
Instead, you need to curate a highly specific, limited tool set to manage this training. You need to curate your cognitive load. And this is where the paradigm shift of the 99 sentences framework comes into play.
This is the core methodology that bridges the gap between theoretical neuroscience and practical daily application.
And it's so approachable.
It is. Rather than trying to master the entire language at once, you deliberately curate a mental repertoire of 99 fundamental high-frequency sentences.
And to be crystal clear, we are not talking about the contrived robotic dialogues you find in Chapter 1 of a standard textbook.
Oh, definitely not.
I mean, let's be real. Nobody in the history of the world has ever walked around internally thinking, hello, where's the library? The library is situated next to the bank.
Exactly. Those sentences serve absolutely zero internal cognitive function.
The 99 sentences you curate must be authentic, granular reflections of your actual daily mental load. We are talking about sentences like, this is taking way longer than I anticipated, or I probably shouldn't have said that in the meeting, or just, I need 5 minutes of silence.
They are the functional glue of your daily existence. And the source material breaks these 99 sentences down into highly specific categories based on their psychological and neurological function.
Which makes it so much easier to organize.
It's brilliant because this categorization ensures you're covering the entire spectrum of human experience, from basic logistics to complex emotional regulation.
Let's really take our time and dive deep into these categories, because this is where the abstract concept of neuroplasticity becomes a tangible, executable daily habit. So the first category they highlight is morning sentences. Let's say you pick 5 to 10 sentences for this bucket. Things like, I didn't sleep a wink last night, or let's just get this over with, or I desperately need caffeine, or maybe something positive like, today is a fresh slate. Why is the morning routine so critical from a neurological standpoint?
It all comes down to establishing momentum during a highly vulnerable cognitive window.
A vulnerable window.
Yes. When you first wake up, your brain is transitioning from the slow delta waves of deep sleep into the faster beta waves of conscious processing.
Okay, so it's booting up.
Right. In this hypnopompic state, as the sleep chemicals start to wash away, your brain reaches for an anchor to orient itself to reality. The initial cognitive sparks of your day preemptively set your brain's default operating system.
So if my very first conscious thought, like that immediate groggy assessment of how tired I am, is forged in my native language, I've basically already lost the battle for the day.
Pretty much.
I've told my brain that English is the tool we are using to survive today.
Exactly. But if you train yourself so that your very first thought, say, I desperately need caffeine, manifests in Spanish or Mandarin or whatever you're learning, you are essentially booting up the operating system in the target language.
Oh, wow.
You are tagging that language as a vital survival tool right out of the gate. It is the aggregation of marginal gains. You win the first thought of the day. You set the trajectory for the next 16 hours.
Win the morning, win the day, but applied to linguistics.
I love that. Okay, the next category is decision-making sentences. We make hundreds, maybe thousands of micro-decisions every single day.
Constant, low-stakes calculations.
Right. Navigating traffic, choosing what to eat, prioritizing tasks. So let's look at examples for this bucket. Should I tackle this email now or put it on the back burner? I'm going to hold off on this until tomorrow. This isn't worth my time right now. Or let's weigh the pros and cons. By shifting these specific thoughts, you're targeting a very different part of the brain, right?
Yes, you are directly engaging the prefrontal cortex, which is the seat of executive functioning.
When you formulate a deliberation entirely in your target language, you are proving to your subconscious that this new language is a valid, reliable tool for navigating reality and solving actual problems.
It makes it useful.
It ceases to be a parlor trick you use for exams or vacations, and it becomes a functional mechanism for making choices.
This next category is where I think this entire framework reaches a whole new level of psychological depth: self-talk and encouragement.
This is a massive one.
We mentioned earlier that the inner voice mitigates stress. How does shifting our self-talk, our internal reactions to failure or frustration into a foreign language impact us? Let's give some examples first. Things like, I totally messed that up. It's just a minor hiccup. I'll figure it out. I need to take a deep breath. Or, I am a work in progress.
What's fascinating here is the intersection of linguistics and emotional psychology. It's truly profound.
How so?
Well, we often view language merely as a sterile conduit for transmitting data to other people. We forget that language is our primary instrument for internal emotional regulation.
That's true. We talk ourselves down.
Right. When you encounter a setback, say you spill your coffee, or you miss a crucial deadline, or you say something embarrassing, your amygdala spikes, and your internal monologue immediately reacts to contextualize that stress.
It's the voice that either beats you up or calms you down.
Precisely. And there is a well-documented psychological phenomenon known as the foreign language effect.
The foreign language effect? What's that?
Studies show that processing emotional events in a second language actually reduces the visceral emotional reactivity. It creates a slight psychological distance.
So it actually makes you calmer.
Yes. So if you can train yourself to narrate your frustration and your resilience in your target language using phrases like, it's a minor hiccup, you are doing something revolutionary. You are completely decoupling the target language from the sterile environment of a classroom.
It becomes yours.
It morphs into a genuine extension of your own identity. You are fostering a profound, authentic, emotional tether to the syntax.
It makes it real. It is no longer just words on a flashcard. It's the voice that comforts you when your heart rate is spiking. It That is incredibly powerful. It changes your relationship with the language entirely.
It really does.
Which leads us into the final two categories, observation and memory, or planning sentences, and identity and curiosity sentences. Let's start with observation. Examples here would be, where did I leave my keys? It is absolutely freezing in here. That guy is walking incredibly fast. Or, I need to remember to buy milk.
Observation sentences are crucial because they anchor the abstract language to concrete physical sensory input.
Oh, I see.
When you look out the window, feel the cold draft and think, it is freezing in here. In your target language, you are tying the vocabulary to your physical nervous system. You are associating the words with the physical sensation of temperature or the visual stimulation of a crowded street.
That grounds it in reality. And then the curiosity sentences, this is about cultivating a bilingual persona. Like, I wonder what the rationale behind that decision was. That is a really bizarre choice. Or, how does this thing actually work? You are training your brain to be inquisitive, to explore the world, using a new linguistic framework.
All of these categories, mourning, decision-making, self-talk, observation, curiosity, they all serve to weave the target language into the absolute deepest, most fundamental layers of your cognitive architecture.
You're rebuilding the foundation.
You are systematically replacing the load-bearing pillars of your native language with the new language.
So we have the categorization of the tools. We know the 99 sentences should be authentic. We know the psychological categories they fall into, and we know why they matter neurologically. But, you know, having a neatly organized toolbox isn't the same as actually building a house.
Not at all.
A listener could write down 99 perfect sentences right now, but if they don't know how to deploy them, it's really just another list of flashcards. We need the exact daily blueprint.
Because a theoretical framework is utterly useless without a sustainable methodology for implementation. If the execution is too complex, the learner will abandon it within a week.
And the source material provides a brilliant, highly pragmatic execution strategy to prevent that burnout. They call it the 3-5-1 method.
This is where it all comes together.
Let's break this down step by step because the biomechanics of this are fascinating. It is designed to be completely manageable, taking only minutes a day. So step 1 is the 3. You select just 3 sentences from your curated list of 99 every single day.
It's just 3.
Not 20, not 50, just 3.
Keep the load small.
Then step 2 is the 5. You vocalize those 3 sentences 5 times in the morning, out loud, in your room alone. And I have to ask, why out loud? If the goal is the internal monologue, why do I need to talk to myself in the mirror?
Because of the literal biomechanics of phonetics. Native languages physically shape the development of our vocal tracts, our tongue placement, and our jaw tension from infancy.
Oh, wow, really?
Yes. The way a native French speaker holds tension in their lips is physically different from a native English speaker. So when you vocalize those sentences 5 times out loud, you aren't just memorizing data, you are building physical muscle memory in your articulatory system.
You're training your face.
You're training the muscles in your mouth and jaw to effortlessly form the specific shapes required by the target syntax. That way, when you need the sentence in public, the physical hardware is ready to execute the software's command.
That makes perfect sense. It's like practicing a golf swing in your living room so your body just knows what to do on the course. Okay, the final piece of the puzzle. Step 3 is the one. And this is the most crucial part of the entire framework. You must consciously apply each of those 3 sentences at least once in a genuine, real-world context throughout your day.
The brilliance of the 3-5-1 method, particularly that final one, lies in its stark contrast to traditional rote memorization.
Rote memorization being just staring at flashcards?
Right. Rote memorization forces data into the brain through sheer blunt repetition, completely devoid of context. You just stare at a list of words until your eyes bleed. It is incredibly inefficient because the brain has no contextual hook to hang the data on.
There's no reason for the brain to care.
Exactly. But this methodology, however, forces organic integration.
By requiring you to apply the sentence to a genuine unfolding context in your actual life, your brain attaches real-world physical and emotional stakes to the syntax. You aren't just sitting at a desk memorizing the phrase, "This is taking way longer than I anticipated."
No, you're living it.
You are actively feeling the hot frustration of being stuck in gridlock traffic, your heart rate is slightly elevated, and you are using that specific linguistic tool to process that specific frustration in real time. You tie the syntax to a real cortisol spike.
Or a dopamine hit when you use an encouraging sentence. By tying the language to neurochemical shifts in your body, the retention rate just skyrockets. The brain categorizes the phrase as a vital, lived experience, not abstract trivia.
So what does this all mean? Let's look at the horizon. What is the ultimate payoff if a listener actually commits to this process? If they sit down this weekend, curate their 99 authentic sentences across the psychological categories, and they execute the 3-5-1 method every single day, what actually happens to their brain?
Well, according to the clinical observations in the source material, and this actually aligns perfectly with established principles of neuroplasticity, if you adhere to this consistency, you will typically experience what is described as a massive eureka moment.
A eureka moment.
Yes, and it usually occurs within about 30 to 40 days of consistent practice.
The breakthrough. The moment the molasses finally clears, what does it actually feel like?
It's surprisingly subtle, actually. It doesn't happen with fireworks or a dramatic swelling of orchestral music. It is described as a deeply unassuming instance of profound clarity.
Really? How so?
You might just be standing in your kitchen waiting for the tea kettle to boil, staring blankly at the wall, and suddenly an entire complex thought manifests in your target language, completely unprompted.
Without the antivirus scan running, no translation bottleneck, no stuttering. No digging through the mental dictionary. It just intuitively, organically arises from your subconscious.
Exactly. That fleeting, unassuming moment in the kitchen is the ultimate validation. It is the biological proof that the groove in the vinyl record has been successfully carved.
The needle is finally tracking.
Your neural pathways have reconfigured. You have successfully shifted the baseline narrative of your mind.
And from that moment on, the ceiling just completely blows off your potential. Because once you have that foundational scaffolding built, once your internal operating system is running natively in the new language, your capacity to absorb and utilize advanced vocabulary increases exponentially.
It is the true genesis of effortless fluency. You are no longer trying to awkwardly graft new vocabulary words onto an old, incompatible operating system.
It just fits.
The new vocabulary you encounter in the world simply slots seamlessly into the new native architecture you've built. You hear a new word in a podcast, and your brain immediately contextualizes it within the target language's framework.
You stop learning the language and you start living inside of it, which is so profound. And that brings our journey today to a close, but it is really just the beginning for you listening. We always want to leave you with an immediate experiment, a way to take this deep dive and test it in your own life right now.
It's all about action.
So here's a challenge we want you to try tonight. When you get into bed tonight, right before you drift off to sleep, I want you to select just one fundamental sentence from your daily reality. Just one.
Keep it simple.
It could be, I am so glad today is over, or I wonder what the weather will be like tomorrow. Translate it perfectly into your target language, and let that single sentence be your final conscious thought as you fall asleep.
That's a great anchor.
And tomorrow morning, when you wake up, before you check your phone, before you let the dread of your schedule wash over you, let a sentence in your target language be your very first conscious thought. Focus on transitioning your reality, one ordinary, mundane thought at a time.
It really is a profound shift in how we interact with our own minds. And, I want to leave you with a final lingering idea to mull over, building on what we discussed regarding the self-talk category.
Let's hear it.
We established that our inner monologue fundamentally shapes our resilience, our reactions, and our emotional reality. So if you are consciously, deliberately rewriting that internal monologue using a completely new language with its own cultural cadences and idioms, are you merely learning how to speak differently? Or, by changing the very tools you use to process your deepest emotions, are you actively constructing a secondary and perhaps more resilient version of your own personality?
Oh, man. That is a wild thought to leave on. Are we literally building a new version of ourselves neuron by neuron? I absolutely love that. So keep pushing your boundaries. Keep a very close eye on what that internal voice is whispering to you all day. And remember, the goal isn't just to speak faster. It's to delete the translation software and finally move with true fluidity. We'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.